Howdy, and welcome to episode 34 of T-Shirts and Shawls. I'm Karen, and I normally record on Thursdays, but today I am recording on Wednesday, July 26th, 2017, although I'll still upload and release this episode on Thursday. The reason for that is, gotta be honest, it has been really challenging to record the podcast this summer while Luke has been home because he likes to interrupt what I'm doing, and I have had to record sections of some of the episodes multiple times because of a super loud noise that he makes or an interruption. And so right now he is playing Lego Star Wars with Daddy, so I figured it was a good time for me to sit down and record when I know I'm not going to be interrupted. So anyway, again, I'm recording on Wednesday. I'll still release this on Thursday, so when you see this, if you see it when it's uploaded, it will be Thursday, July 27th, 2017. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. The shirt I'm wearing today is a TARDIS shirt. And basically I wanted to wear this shirt because since I have recorded the previous episode, the announcement for who the 13th Doctor for Doctor Who has been made. So I was trying not to, read too much of the speculation about it because sometimes there's just so much that the speculation that goes into it, and I kind of wanted to just be surprised by the announcement. Although a good chunk of the speculation was that this doctor was going to be a female, and I kind of felt that would probably indeed be the case, especially the kind of second half of this past season of Doctor Who. They've really set up the idea that it is entirely possible for a Time Lord to regenerate as a woman. I mean, they've set it up the whole time with the character of Missy anyway, but they really emphasized that point kind of in this previous season. So it felt very much like it was setting up the idea. Plus, there have been little things here and there in previous episodes that I think have kind of led toward that possibility. So I was not really surprised with the announcement that indeed the new Doctor is Jodie Whittaker. So we have a female Doctor coming up. I am familiar with the actress from Broadchurch. Looking at her filmography, I think that's the only thing that she's been in that I've seen. But I really like Broadchurch. I don't think I've ever mentioned that on the show, on the podcast, but I do like Broadchurch, and it will be interesting to see kind of her range as an actor, to see what she does with the Doctor. And I think, putting aside the fact that kind of the woman versus man thing, I think just the fact that she is going to offer something different to the role. No matter what person it is, the Doctor always, whatever the actor is who plays the Doctor, always adds something new to the role. And I think that is kind of one of the reasons why Doctor Who has lasted for so long, because even though there have definitely been some episodes that have been better than others, for the most part, it doesn't really get completely stale because the new actor in the role basically brings fresh air to the show. And it's, not always a direction that I like. I've not kept back my opinion. I mean, Peter Capaldi, I don't think he was a bad Doctor. There were some moments that I really, really loved in his episodes. And like I said, he did grow on me, especially with Bill as his companion. I really liked that. But for the most part, he was an okay Doctor. Not super bad, but not super great either. But he still brought something new and different to the role, and it was interesting to see the direction that the show went in when he was part of that. So with that kind of in mind, with a new doctor comes a new direction, breathing new life into the show. And I think that that this actress will definitely provide some opportunities to explore maybe some different aspects of the Doctor that we haven't gotten before. Any actor in the role would probably do that, but I think that it definitely opens up some possibilities. I thought about talking about some of the really the vitriol that I've seen online from people who are so hateful about the choice. And I thought that maybe I would talk a little bit about my response to that, but I think I actually don't. I want to keep kind of a positive, the possibilities that are coming up, despite what some people fear or may think that this means for Doctor Who. I think that it is definitely something that will allow us to see a different facet of the Doctor. And so I am really curious to see how that is handled. Do have a while to wait before we actually get to see it, but it is exciting to think of the possibilities. So the shawl. I have finished my Kriptonite shawl, which, by the way, I probably would never actually wear the way that I'm wearing it now, but I wanted you guys to see the really gorgeous lace work that is in this shawl. So kind of wearing it stretched out on my chair, just popped down again. Wearing it stretched out on my across my shoulders is kind of the best way to really show you the kind of the gorgeous stitch patterns that are there. So kind of feel like I'm wearing maybe a poncho. I was thinking kind of a bib type thing. But I think that kind of shows it off a little bit better. So I finished this kind of at, for me, breakneck speed. I'm looking on my Ravelry page. I started it on July 2nd and finished July 21st. So that is just under 3 weeks to finish this shawl. And do you see the beads on it? I hope you see the beads there. Hopefully that shows up. So there are beads all throughout the shawl, and putting them on, one by one with the, technically it's the dental floss method, but I use the sewing needle and thread like I showed you guys last time. That was definitely, kind of tedious, but the pattern was extremely well written, very easy to follow, and so that made it go very smoothly to be able to get through it in time. The reason why I was working on it so much is because, I think I've mentioned this, this is a gift for my mother-in-law and for her birthday, which is next month. I think it's August 9th. Double check the date. But I didn't want to send this in the mail. So they are coming to visit this weekend. They will be here on Friday, and so I will be wrapping this up and giving it to her this weekend. And I'm really looking forward to it, to seeing her reaction. She is someone who is extremely, extremely knitworthy. She is a quilter herself, and so she kind of knows that when you give someone a handmade gift, the biggest compliment that you can give someone is to actually use that. So anything that I have given her, she definitely wears and uses. She doesn't just say, "Oh, that's pretty," and put it away in the closet because she's afraid she's going to hurt it. So she actually wears it. She brings things to her quilting guild and shows off. Look at my daughter-in-law made me. So that's always nice that she really appreciates it. So the pattern is the Kriptonite Shawl. The designer is Anna Victoria. Let me double check. Yes, Anna Victoria. And if you have not looked at this designer's profile of patterns, portfolio, that's the word I'm looking for, portfolio of patterns, you have to go check it out. This is a gorgeous shawl, and she has quite a few other extremely gorgeous shawls. Very, very well-written pattern, like I said. It is charted only, so if you don't do charts, then unfortunately you probably wouldn't be able to do this pattern. But easy to read charts. Yeah, pretty, I guess, for someone who's familiar with charts. But her shawls, just looking at her designs on Ravelry, gorgeous, gorgeous shawls. So check those out. They are really awesome. And then the yarn is my hand spun. So this was some Julie spins that I had in my stash. I think I got the fiber. I'm looking on Ravelry right now really fast. Where did it go? I had this in my stash in, well, I spun it in 2014. So June 2014. So 3 years ago that I actually spun this, and the fiber itself, come on Ravelry, the fiber itself I got in 2010. So had the fiber 2010, spun it in 2014, finally knitted it in 2017. So I guess you can say this was a project that was long in the making, even if the knitting didn't take very long. So I'm glad that I was able to finally use this yarn. And unfortunately, I still have quite a bit left over. Maybe it's fortunate. I really wanted to use as much as possible in this shawl. I calculated that I had about 600 yards, and this shawl called for something close-ish to that. But I still have quite a bit of yarn left over, so I'll have to figure out something else to do with it. There was one spot, so since it's hand spun, there is definitely some thicker and thinner spots. So there's one spot, it was right toward the end, and it was on a side. Maybe it's on the other side, but it was one of the beads sections on the side. And I was trying to get the bead. Yeah, it's on this side. So I don't know if you can actually see the beads. The light doesn't want to focus. So right here, there is a bead missing where it should be. And that's because where the stitch that the bead was supposed to go on, that was a part in my hand spun that wasn't spun very, very thin. It was a big poofy section, and I tried to kind of manipulate the stitch and move it so I could get the bead at least on some part of it, and it was just too poofy right there, and I just couldn't get the bead on. So I thought, you know what, it's right at the edge of the shawl. It's probably something that, unless you know to look for it, you won't see it. At least that's what I hope. So I just decided, instead of messing with it and trying to force it on, because I was always afraid that that I would, accidentally break the hand spun. When I was putting on some of the beads, because sometimes I had to force them on a little bit. So I just decided it wasn't worth forcing it, and just to leave the bead off in that section. But otherwise, there are lots and lots of beads in there. I had that big tube of beads, and I used about maybe 3/4 of the tube. So I do still have beads left over. I have yarn left over, and I have beads. I may have to do something with the leftover yarn with the beads, because I really like the way they look together. Okay, we'll have to think about what to do with that. But anyway, so this is finished and going to the gift recipient in a couple of days, and I'm really excited about it. So it seems like it was a week of finishing. Besides the shawl that I finished, I also finished 2 other projects. So if you've been watching the podcast, you may remember that I was working on the first Heroes of Yarnia Yarn Quest scarf. It is either a double knit or a stranded color work, and it's super cool pattern that it's like an RPG type of thing, so you roll dice to determine which of the charts that you knit. And it's a really awesome concept, and the designer has kind of gone on and done a whole series within the Yarnia idea. And sorry, every time I stand up and sit back down, then after a minute or two the chair settles. Anyway, so I started the scarf way back when it was a mystery knit along, basically, when the knit along was going on, and I started out with great gusto, and then I ran out of steam before I'd even finished the second chapter. And part of that is because I chose to do stranded color work, and this may have been exactly the same if I had chosen double knitting as well, but I chose to do stranded color work, and I can do stranded color work. I started out a little tight at the beginning, but then I started loosening up and things were going well, and then I just got tired of doing it. As exciting as the project is, and it is a really exciting project, and I really wanted to do it, but apparently I'm just not that into stranded color work. It's just not something that I find particularly fun to knit. And so I put it aside. And in my my Facebook group, there's Works in Progress Wednesday. So every Wednesday you go through and list all your works in progress and what progress you've made in the past week. And that one was second on my list for the longest time. I probably should go back in the Facebook group and see how long it's been on the list, with the notation, no progress made. So it sat and sat and sat. And like I said, I was toward the end of the second chapter. There were 8 chapters, so there was still a lot of work to go. So I decided what I should do is just finish it off where I was and just have it be like a wall hanging or some type of decoration rather than finishing the scarf, because I honestly would never finish the scarf. I really, really, truly think it would become a perpetual work in progress. So that's what I did. And so I'll show it to you this way, so you can see how long or short it is. This is my completed work. So I've got some cool graphics down there, the dragon and some other things. And then up here, I've got these really cool foxes. The kitsune or kitsune, I don't know if the E is pronounced. Anyway, so it looks really cool. I love this. I love my color choices. This was out of my Camelot base, so that merino cashmere nylon. The gray is night, so it's a charcoal gray, and then this bright green is called Dinadin. So I love the color choices. I love the design. I love what it looks like. I would love to have the finished scarf. I just didn't love knitting it. Nothing to do with the pattern. The pattern was perfectly fine. Just me. I'm apparently not a stranded colorwork knitter. I can do it for short sections of time, but something for an extended period of time is just not what I do. In fact, I can tell so much that this is true because I actually had so here's where it ended. I actually had started the next clue, the next chart. It was an 8 round chart, and I had done 3 of the 8 rounds. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll go through and I'll finish this chart. And then I will I did a little bit of ribbing up at the top to finish it off. And I started working on it, and I got halfway around. And I was like, oh my gosh, I still have 4.5 more rounds to go of this. I don't want to do it. And I felt like if I didn't make some type of decision at that moment, that I was going to put it aside at that point and still have it not be finished. So I actually tinked back 3.5 rounds of stranded colorwork because that was better to me than knitting 5 rounds of stranded colorwork. So I'd rather tink back than to knit new rounds. Isn't that awful? But I think that really goes to show that it really is not the thing that it gets me excited about knitting. I love lace. I love cables. That is what I enjoy doing. And as much as I love how this looks, yeah. I guess I'm not going to be doing any other of the Yarnia quests because they're all, color work types of things. Maybe I'll try a smaller one. I think there's a hat. Maybe I could get through that, but yeah, just really not my thing apparently. But this is finished, and I will find a nice place to put it on display, so that way my work that I did do on it will not be for nothing. And then I have another finished object. I have a finished pair of socks. So this was my exclusive colorway for the Houston Fiber Fest, and since it was an exclusive, I did not need to keep the sample sock around, and so I knit a second sock, so that way I actually have a complete pair. And I just finished the second sock this morning, so my morning knitting time, that's what I was doing. I had gotten to the toe on Monday night in my knitting group, and I decided, you know what? It won't take me very long to finish off the sock, so I am going to do that. And I did. So, new pair of socks for my sock drawer. So very exciting there. I mentioned when I finished the first sock that I wanted to really keep the stripe pattern going, so you can see on the top that the stripe pattern is not interrupted. So what I did, because I also really like to do that heel flap and gusset, that is my favorite heel, it fits me the best, and so so I want to do that. So I used the other end of the yarn cake. So I stopped where I was, I did not break the yarn, I left it where it was, and then I went to the other end of the yarn cake and started the heel from that end. And then when I finished the heel, I picked back up the end that I was using on the leg and was able to just continue working that around and getting that stripe pattern. And I actually have matchy socks. Usually I intentionally don't match my stripes, but this time I decided to go ahead and see if I could match them, and they match up pretty nicely, including the heels. I made sure that I started at the same color on both heels, so there was a little bit of wasted yarn because I had to get to that color, but overall I still have some yarn left over to do something else with, and like I said, another finished pair of socks. So since I have a few finished objects, that means that I got to start some new projects. So I have 2 new things to show you. I am working on other projects as well. I still have another pair of socks, that mustache yarns in the dark side EPV colorway. And I am at the same place that I was, I'm pretty sure it's the same place that I was on the previous episode. So now that I finished the other set of socks, I can go back to that one, and I'm also on the second sock there. Just a little bit before time to turn the heel, so I won't show you those since I don't think I've made any progress. I also have that hand spun yarn cowl that I'm working on with the hand spun that was way overly twisted. I say I'm working on, I actually have not worked on it in the past 2 weeks, which is why, again, I'm not showing it to you. And I have something else that I'm not remembering that I haven't, that's just sitting in my knitting basket that I haven't been working on. So anyway, 2 new projects that I cast on. Both of them are shawls. One of them, this one right here, which I just barely started, is my entry for this quarter's knit along for the podcast. So the theme is any pattern, even things that are not shawls, so any pattern that is inspired by or named after a fairy tale. So I chose the Beauty and the Beast shawl by Very Busy Monkey. And this is a shawl that I kind of had on my to be knit list at some points because I thought it was really a really nice shawl, and so I decided this was the perfect time to do it since it fits with the theme. And I have just barely started that one. So it starts out with this cable, see, maybe you can see the cable there. So it starts off with a cable pattern, and then it basically grows. And I will link to the pattern in the show notes so you can see what this will look like whenever it gets finished. But the yarn that I am using for this is actually an undyed yarn. So this is a base that is a blend of merino and yak and nylon. So I believe the breakdown is 70% merino, 20% yak, and 10% nylon, but I have to double check that. This is a new base that Roundtable Yarns will be carrying. The Yarn Club just got this base this month. So this was the base that the Yarn Club got this month. I am calling it Legend. And that means that the Yarn Club gets it exclusively for 1 month. So on August 15th, this will be available for outside the Yarn Club. And it won't be something that I carry a lot of, but it will be something that I carry kind of in a limited supply. And part of the reason for that is because this is the undyed state of it. So it comes across very dark. I mean, it is very dark. The yak itself is kind of what gets that. And so any color you put on it is going to be a lot darker. And in fact, I put a purple on it that's probably closer to my hair, but because of the darkness, it really makes that purple look very dark. And I don't know if you can hear that in the background, that is actually Sam. So this yarn, Legend Merino Yak and Nylon, starting August 15th, will be available in limited quantities for, I guess, the general public, people that are not just people that are in the yarn club. But anyway, so any color dyed on this is going to darken, basically, because of the natural color of the base. But I really like the natural color of the base a lot, and decided I wanted to knit my shawl in the natural color, because I wanted it to be kind of a gray shawl, so I thought this was perfect. And I'm really enjoying knitting with this so far. It's very soft, but it's also, because it's got a bit of a tighter twist, it's showing the cables pretty well. So really happy with that project so far. And then I have another project that I started, and perhaps you have seen this pattern pop up on Ravelry. It is something that definitely jumped to the top of the Hot Right Now list, and a lot of people are making it. So I will show you, I think, let's see, which is the front side. This is the front side. It's garter stitch, it really doesn't matter too much, but what do you think this is? It's the Wonder Woman wrap. So I think I mentioned last time that I was planning on knitting this, and indeed I started it. So I finished obviously the first red stripe section, and now I'm in the yellow. And this is a section of short rows, which in the pattern was written as a wrap and turn, and I way much prefer the German short row method, so I used German short rows instead. It was super easy to convert this to German short rows, and I'm happy with the way it turned out. So if you prefer German short rows, really easy to make that change. Anyway, so the pattern is well written, and everything makes sense so far. I'm really excited to see how this turns out. And I dyed the yarn. So this yellow color is actually called Doubt and Suspicion, and it's the color that the Yarn Club, see I'm doing Yarn Club stuff, that the Yarn Club received last month. And colors get a 3-month exclusivity with the Yarn Club. So if that was the June color, then we've got July, August, September. So it'll be September 15th before this particular color is going to be available to people outside the Yarn Club. And then the red, I was actually planning on doing my Poisoned Apple colorway, which I dye by doing a red, and then I put it back in the dye pot with a little bit of gray it's called Poisoned Apple, to poison the apple. And when I was doing that, I had pulled out the yellow to check on it, and then I was pulling out the red to get ready to add the gray onto it. And then I thought, you know what, I really like the way this red plays with the yellow, and I don't think that I want to add the gray to it, and so I decided to just leave it as it was. So this is technically not a colorway that I offer, but if you do like it yourself, I will call it Unpoisoned Apple, and I would be happy to do a custom dye order for that if you'd like. But anyway, so Unpoisoned Apple, I guess. So I'm really happy with how this is working up, and that is also a gift that will be for my sister-in-law for Christmas. So hopefully I'll have it done in plenty of time for Christmas. But I'm really enjoying the pattern so much that I think I need to knit a second one for myself. And when I was at the my release party for my book at the Knitting Fairy, there was someone there who had picked up a blue and a red, and she was actually in a different base, and she was actually trying to decide between the two colors, like which one she was going to get. But the way she was holding them together, I was like, oh, that blue and red really look nice together. And I think that would actually make a really good Wonder Woman shawl, the blue and red that she had. So, and it was the Morgan Le Fay and Destroyer of Good Nights colorway, which actually kind of, even though Destroyer of Good Nights refers to Guinevere, could actually also refer to Morgan. But anyway, so I think those two colors together really worked nicely, and so I might have to do a Wonder Woman shawl for myself. in those two colors. So we'll see. I've got to get through this first one first, and then the Beauty and the Beast shawl, since that is kind of a deadline also, since the knit along runs through this quarter. And like I said, I've got a couple of other things that are on the needles, but because I've been working on this shawl and finishing it, I hadn't really gotten much progress on those. So we'll see what happens over the next 2 weeks. What I am dyeing. Basically, I am getting ready for the DFW yarn crawl. I will be having a trunk show at the Knitting Fairy. My yarn will be there the entire 10 days of the crawl. I'm taking over the front room of the shop, and then I will personally be there the first Friday and Saturday for sure, and then I'll probably pop in at multiple points during the crawl. But anyway, so that's what I'm working on. And so I usually have, like, I make a little list of these are the things that I need to dye for a show. And a lot of times that list is kind of scribbled on like a scratch piece of paper. And this time I actually got a binder and I printed out this grid that I was able to fill in, and I can actually check off. It's in the dye pot, it's on the drying rack, it's reskeined and labeled. So I can kind of see where it is in the process, because sometimes something will be on like cooling or on the dyeing rack, and I can't remember when I'm deciding the next day what I need to dye. I think that's on the drying rack, and then I have to go check. Anyway, so I just made myself a nice organized list. So even though I'd made this nice organized list, I was dyeing Camelot, so the merino cashmere nylon base. And instead, one morning, instead of referring back to my list, I decided to go off my memory. I really should refer back to the list. So anyway, one of the colors that I chose to dye that day is called By Enchantment, Thus Was I Disformed. I usually just refer to it as By Enchantment, since it has a long name. Anyway, so I got that in the dye pot and I was dyeing it, and then a little later I was coming back in and checking something on my inventory, on my actual inventory spreadsheet. I have an Excel spreadsheet with the inventory, and I noticed that I already had 4 skeins of that colorway dyed on Camelot. Apparently, yes, I did need to dye that colorway, but not on Camelot. I was supposed to dye it on Tristan. So my memory was partially right, I just didn't remember which base it was supposed to be on. And it's a color that I think is a pretty color. It's like a pastel blue, but in all honesty, it doesn't sell very well. So I really did not need 8 skeins of that colorway. So I decided, experiment time, let's see what happens. And I figured that out while it was still in the dye pot. So I thought, okay, I've always wanted to, usually what I do is the yarn is out of the water and I put the dye in the water, and then I dip the yarn into the dye pot and let it heat up and everything. But I thought, what would happen if I actually took some dye and poured it over the top of the yarn that's in the dye pot, and maybe like moved it around a little bit here and there and kind of poured dye directly on it. Well, what happens, at least the way that I did it, is you get big splotches of color. Because the way dyeing works is you add heat plus acid, and that is what creates the chemical bond of the dye to the fiber. Since I had already dyed the first color, that light blue, it already had heat, it was still hot, and it had acid in the water. So basically, as soon as the new dye touched the yarn, since it already had heat and acid, the dye bonded like that. So what I have is basically this. So, and the light's not really showing it very well. Okay, let's see if that works. So you can see it's very blotchy. There are sections where it's definitely darker than others. So there's some other sections, and then there's some sections where the dye really didn't hit it at all, and it's still just the blue without any of that pink on there. I was really hoping that the pink would blend with the blue and it would be a lot more purple, but that's really not what happened. And I honestly can't decide if I like this or not. Or I guess I don't really love it. I guess I honestly can't decide if this is something that other people might like or not. So I'm trying to decide if I want to actually try it out like this and see if people actually like it, or if I should overdye it again, some darker color, and make it a little less splotchy and a little more, not solid, but like I said, it just splotchy is the word that I want to use for it, and I'm not a big fan of splotchy. So maybe you guys can help me out. I don't know how well you can see it with the lighting, but do you like this? Do you think it would knit up very well? That's the question. How will this actually knit up? And I have 4 skeins of it, and all 4 skeins are going to look a little bit different because that pink hits the yarn in different places. So I'm not really sure how I feel about this. I'm going to wind this back into a hank, or wind it back into the little twisted skein thing. This is what I always do, and then I use my chin to hold it. There you go. So what do you think? Overdye it again, get rid of the splotchiness, or try it as is? I'll see if you guys have any opinions. You can go to the Ravelry group for the podcast and leave a comment in the thread for this episode. Anyway, so yeah, that's what I'm working on. I'm getting ready for the yarn crawl. Kicks off. I am actually doing my setup on this August 16th, so that is 3 weeks from today. So I really need to get busy, and so that's what I'm going to be doing over the next few weeks. So what I'm designing, I still need to kind of get busy and work on some new designs. I need to, as I mentioned before, I need to redo that green shawl that was upside down, and then I need to work on a design for the DFW Designers Collection. Honestly, I am really looking forward to Luke starting school, because it is hard to sit down and have concentrated time when he is home. So that's one reason why I really haven't been doing very much designing, because I haven't been able to sit down and really focus on developing something. So things are going to be in the works. I just really need to get started. But I wanted to talk about my release party for my book. So I did show this on the podcast when I got the sample copy. So there's my new book, Parliament of Cowls. And we had a release party this past weekend on the 22nd, on Saturday, at the Knitting Fairy, so my local yarn shop. And it was really nice. I got to have a little display with all 8 cowls on it. And there were people who came. I think there were at least a dozen people, maybe a bit more than that, but probably right around that number, who came for the release party, and then a few people who, it was Saturday in the shop, and they were there to shop and happened to guys time it right, and then there was a class that was taking place kind of toward the end when I was leaving. So it was a really great crowd just to sit around and get to chat with other people, especially people that I only get to see a few times a year because they live like completely on the other side of town. So it is definitely nice, especially when I get to see some of those people. The only thing is that I forgot to bring something to knit. So I was in a yarn shop. I easily could have bought something and started a new project. But yeah, I completely forgot to bring something to knit. But it was still fun to walk around and sit and talk with people. So for those of you who did come to the release party, thank you so much for making the trip out and coming to the party, whether it was only a 5-minute drive or an hour and a half. I think about an hour and a half, maybe almost an hour and 45 minutes. One of the farthest people, Sarah, my tech editor, she came. So really appreciate that she came out, and she also gave me a little bottle of bubbly as a celebration. So if you're watching this, Sarah, thank you. And so yeah, it was a good time. I really enjoyed getting to see people, and also to kind of see the excitement over kind of what people were planning to knit. So yeah, good times. I love my yarn community. So thank you guys so much who came to the release party. It was a lot of fun. I do have a little bit of spinning progress to talk about. So I am pretty sure that I showed you guys a while back that I was spinning this green fiber, and I was planning to do it as a 2-ply because since it's a more solid color, I think that it would look really great as a lace pattern. So you can see hand spun more solid color in the lace pattern, and 2-ply is what works best for lace. So so I started spinning this quite a while back. I probably have the date on Ravelry, but I don't want to look it up to see how long ago it was. But anyway, so I thought, I think 2 weekends ago, that I was finished with the singles and that I would start plying that weekend. And I pulled off my 2 bobbins, and I looked at one bobbin and it was nice and fat and full, and the other bobbin I looked at and now it's nice and fat and full, but when I looked at it before, it was not. It was very obviously had much less fiber on it than the first bobbin. And I thought, oh gosh, I completely messed up when I measured out the fiber. When I basically split it in 2, I usually use a scale and weigh it so I can get the same amount for each bobbin. And so I thought, wow, I was really, really off. Like really, really off when I did that. How did that happen? And then I had a light bulb moment, and I went and checked my bag for my spinning wheel because I have an Ashford Joys, so I have a bag for it. And sure enough, tucked into the inner pocket of the bag was probably about half of, so a quarter of the entire braid, but half of what was supposed to be on that bobbin was still in fiber form, tucked away in my bag. So I thought that I had finished the singles of this of that project, but I had not. So I did finish. I used that remaining fiber, and the bobbins look much more balanced now. But unfortunately, that time where I was going to ply, I used for spinning the single, so I still need to make time to sit down and actually ply this. So maybe we have company this weekend. Maybe I'll get to do it the next weekend or something, and finally get this spinning project done. I did start another spinning project, just a little bit of a start, doing that one on my e-spinner. And that one is a nice, I should have grabbed it to show you, but the fiber braid, the color is a nice gradient that works its way throughout the braid. So I'm going to spin it as one big long single and then do something called chain plying. If you're not a spinner, basically that makes it so that you can keep your color progression kind of in the order that you've spun it. So that way you're not doing different plies with different colors and kind of mixing the colors together. It keeps it the same color together, and so hopefully that will be a gradient when the yarn is actually finished. But since I've only just started that, it's got a long way to go on that project. But I am actually doing at least a little bit of spinning, which is a lot better than I have done previously. On Monday, I got the latest shipment for the Elemental Fiberworks Fiber Club. So I did not open it. I still have it in the shipping envelope. So I'm going to open up the envelope and actually surprise myself on camera. The scissors do not want to go through this. It was folded over, so I'm not cutting into the fiber. I'm using scissors. Okay, ooh, I'm already seeing some pretties. So this, looking at the note, the inspiration is a postcard for Kepler 16b, and that means, oh, how neat. That means the postcard is this. So you can already see the colors that are going to come across in the fiber, and it is, ooh, Targi, bamboo, and silk. How cool. Okay, so here it is. So start off with the kind of purple and pinks, which I really love, and going into the yellows and oranges, which are not so much my thing, but I think that together it actually works into a really, really nice colorway. And I think this will be something that I will want to do that same thing I mentioned in the spinning, where I'm going to spin it all as one single and then chain ply it, since that it has a nice color progression throughout the braid, and I don't want to mix up the colors and potentially muddy them. So that will probably be what I do. Targi, bamboo, and silk. Look really cool. I love Targi. If you've watched before, you've seen me kind of go woo over Targi. So Targi in bamboo and silk. So if you see the little kind of streaks in here, I don't know. Yeah, there we go. You should be able to see these. These streaks are the bamboo. So that is really cool. Yeah, I like that. So thank you from Elemental Fiberworks. And there's a little note in here. Supposedly this was supposed to be the last shipment, so it was every 3 months, and then you re-sign up every 3 months. And so this has been a full year. I've signed up every quarter. And little note says, I'm so grateful for every single Visions of Fiber Club member. Your interest is what has kept this club going. There will be one more 3-month round of Visions of Fiber. If I remember right, she said that there was another series of postcards so these are released by NASA, that NASA released, not a whole series, just a few more postcards. So she was able to get some more inspiration. And so she's going to do one more quarter. So I will be watching. It says watch your email for a renewal link. I will be watching for that. And then after the previous club members get a chance to sign up, because she does have a limited number of spaces, after they get a chance, if she has any more spaces, which she usually has at least a couple, then she opens it up to people who are not already in the club. So if you are interested in this, it looks like there will be 3 more months. So go to the Elemental Fiberworks website, which I will link in the show notes, sign up for her newsletter, and then you'll get a notification of when the signups for the Fiber Club are coming. So she's done a really, really great job over the course of this year at interpreting these posters, and I'm definitely going to be in for the next 3 months. So reading and watching. Last time I mentioned that I was in a really big reading slump and I hadn't really been doing very much reading. And I have been thinking of ways to get out of the reading slump. Unfortunately, I've just kind of been really busy the past 2 weeks, especially dealing with the cats and everything. So I really haven't had much time, even if I wanted to read, to sit down and read. But I did actually start a new book by Rachel Kane. It is the 3rd book in her Great Library series, and I forgot to look up the name of this particular one. I think it starts out, the first book is Ink and Bone, and then the 2nd book, and then the 3rd book. I will link to the 3rd book in the show notes. Anyway, I really enjoyed the first 2 books, and so the 3rd book just came out, and so as soon I actually pre-ordered it, so when it came out, it hit my Kindle, and I started reading it, and I can tell that either this book is just really good, which it is really good, or maybe my reading mojo is back, because I am wanting to continue reading. Like when I sit down to read for a little bit, I don't want to stop. I want to at least get to the end of a chapter before I put the book down. Kind of a more natural break, even though sometimes, chapters end, you want to continue on to the next if there's some type of cliffhanger. But like in the books that I had been reading kind of before that, whenever I was, finished whatever I was doing that allowed me time to read, I would just stop wherever. I wouldn't wait until I got to the end of the chapter. I could be in the middle of a scene and I could tell that it was kind of in a scene that I should just continue reading on, but I didn't really want to read on. So, again, I don't know if it was actually the book or if it was just kind of me being in the reading slump, but this book is definitely one that I want to continue reading, so I think that's a really good sign. And I am over halfway finished with it. So hopefully I will maybe be out of that reading slump and continue reading some other good books. As far as books that I've been listening to, I had been listening to, it was a very long book, so many hours of listening, the newest Robin Hobb book. So this is in the Fitz and the Fool trilogy, the final book in that trilogy, called Assassin's Fate. And she has said before that she's done, Fitz's story is over. She didn't really plan to write anymore. And then she came back and wrote another trilogy, and then at the end of that, she said Fitz's story is done, and I'm not going to be writing anymore. And then there is this other trilogy. I will say the way she ended this, the story of Fitz and the Fool is done. There was definitely an ending. Potentially the possibility for more stories to go on. Definitely with some of the other characters, more stories could happen. But it really, the story of Fitz and the Fool has ended. I don't want to give away spoilers because it is a very, very new book, and I do recommend all of the books about Fitz that Robin Hobb has written. So I don't want to give any spoilers. But I will say that I think I kind of like the endings of the first two trilogies better. Like they weren't always the best ending for Fitz, but they at least left him in a place where he was, if not happy, at least he was content. And in fact, I think that the end of the first trilogy, she actually uses that line, or something very similar. And in this one, I'm not sure I like the way she ended the story. I will say that I think... try not to be spoilery, I do understand how it fits. So it's not a problem of the ending seeming to come out of left field, or to not go with the story. It just isn't necessarily the ending that I would have chosen. I think I'll leave it at that. So it's not a terrible ending. It really does fit. It really does make sense. I understand why she chose to end, or I think why she chose to end the book that way, or the whole series that way, but it's not the ending I would have chosen. One thing that was kind of interesting, if you have read other Robin Hobb books, she has related trilogies, so the Ship series and then the Rain Wilds series. And in this book in particular, she goes, Fitz basically has a lot of traveling that he does, and he actually goes to the Rain Wilds, and he meets a lot of the characters that we see in the Rain Wilds series. And then there is also, he travels on, give a little bit away, he travels on Paragon. So if you've read the Ship series and you know who Paragon is, and so he's, there's kind of an update of what's been going on with Paragon and with the crew of that ship. So if you like the other related stories, it was kind of nice to see kind of what happened to those characters after their trilogies were ended. So that was a nice way, I think, of tying everything together and wrapping things up, I guess. I have no idea if she's planning on writing more books that are within that world, but anyway, it was a good journey. Like I said, not quite the destination I would have preferred, but overall, I think it was a nice story, and she was able to they weren't loose ends, but she was definitely able to tie a lot of things together. So Robin Hobb, really recommend her books. And I will link to that book in particular, and then her webpage with all of her books listed in the show notes. So that takes care of reading. As far as watching is concerned, I mentioned in the shirt section that I've been watching Broadchurch. So the current, I guess, third season of Broadchurch is airing right now. In fact, since tonight is actually Wednesday when I'm recording this, a new episode comes on tonight. I think that one of the things I like about Broadchurch is that, yes, there is obviously a main storyline, and that main story is a little bit complex. I think the first season was perhaps the most straightforward, and in the second season there was definitely a lot to it. But one of the things I like about it is how interconnected a lot of the people in the town are, and kind of what happens, and you get it kind of piece by piece and puzzle by puzzle. It's a kind of a mystery, detectives that are trying to solve. In the first two seasons it was a murder, and in this season it was a rape. So that is the mystery they are solving. And kind of as everything unravels and we get the story, you really get to know a lot of the people in the town, and kind of how they interact with one another, and they really are much fully fleshed out characters. And even characters from the first season that you think, oh, their story is over, it's really not over, and those characters, even into this season, are carrying forward, and we're still, getting that story. So it's not like, hey, new mystery, completely new set of people and whatnot. So I think it's overall a show that I'm really enjoying and I highly recommend. And this season is the last season. If I understand right, the showrunner of Broadchurch is the one who's going to be taking over Doctor Who. So I guess that's probably one reason why Broadchurch isn't going to be continuing. But I'm enjoying that. And then the other thing I mentioned before that I was watching Anne with an E, the Netflix series. And I hadn't realized that I think it's only 6 episodes long, so I didn't have very much more to watch. I had watched half of it. And I said that although there were definitely changes from the book, I felt that I was enjoying this series overall. And I'm not sure that I can still say that after I have finished the first season. Why? I understand, I think, what this show was trying to do. It was trying to show that Anne's situation before she was adopted by Matthew and Marilla was a really, really horrible situation, and it probably affected her a lot more than the book really lets on. Anne in the book, she even though she faced some horrible things, she's always an optimist. She's always, looking on the bright side, making up stories, but also very, very heartfelt, definitely wanting to help people out. And in this Anne with an E series, they've really brought out kind of the grittier side of things. And they've made some changes to the story that highlight that. And one of the things is that Anne in the book is although there's a little bit of hesitation, she's pretty much embraced by the town fairly easily. That doesn't happen in the series. In fact, she really, really is ostracized to the point of I think actually they probably took it a little too far. And then they had to have this whole story where, I'm trying not to give too much away, where somebody's house catches on fire, and Anne is one of the ones, it's through her quick thinking and her heroic actions that they're able to, I think it was someone who was still in the house. Now I'm not even remembering the exact details. But anyway, so she's heroic and she's saved the, whatever, I think, like I said, I think it was a person in the house. Wow, my memory just really isn't remembering it. And after that, then the town folks started to respond to her a little bit more. So they really kind of played that up. They've really played up the idea of, I guess, kind of the risk that's not danger, I guess, that happens in the outside world. So when Anne in the second episode goes off on her own to go back to the orphanage, which by the way never happens in the book, there's a scene where this guy tries to, I guess, kind of take her home from the train station. Say he says, he's supposed to pick her up, and she, she kind of thinks that something is weird about that, and so she runs away from him, and then you kind of see him turning to another kid and kind of trying the same line. And so the idea there is he's probably, kidnapping kids or, taking them for some horrible purpose. And so, just kind of that kind of seedier underbelly of the world. And toward the end of the, I'm trying not to give away too many things, but toward the end, I'll just say it looks like Green Gables is going to be under siege. Is probably a little too strong of a word, but there are some not too pleasant characters who have made their way to Green Gables. And again, this is something that the show has added. And I can it's trying to make the show its own. It is trying to offer its own interpretation of Anne of Green Gables, and I can give it that. But there's one moment that I think really, really stretches things and goes away from the heart of the book. And again, I don't want to give a spoiler in case you do want to watch it. I will just say it happens toward the end of this season, and it is something that Matthew tries to do. And I think it's completely out of character for Matthew. And I really, really think that moment is just really, really wrong. And it didn't work for me. It didn't work for the character. I really think it was out of his character. And that moment in particular, like I said, I could forgive the other things, but that moment, I think that was a misstep. And I don't know if I plan to continue watching the series. When I assume there will be. I mean, it left it at a cliffhanger. I assume there will be a second season. But I don't know that I will be watching it. I think I'll go back to my Megan Follows version and kind of watch that again and get back to the happier, more cheerful and kind of get that back in my head. Anyway, so that is what I have been reading and watching. Quick reminder that I mentioned it earlier, but the theme for this third quarter knit along is fairy tales. Any pattern inspired by or named after a fairy tale. So it doesn't have to be a shawl. It can be something else if you want. That is the theme for this quarter's knit along. It started at the beginning of July and runs through the end of September. So you have until September 30th to finish your project. And I showed you guys in the last episode some of the prizes that I got. Lots of goodies. So hopefully you will participate in the knit along and potentially win one of those prizes. So there is a chat thread on the Ravelry forum for the podcast, as well as an FO thread. So when you do finish something, you can post to the FO thread. And I probably will post the first giveaway. I'll kind of do a prompt since I don't think there are any FOs yet. I probably will post some type of prompt in the chat thread and do a giveaway between now and the next recording of the podcast. So make sure you are checking the thread on Ravelry so you can see when that giveaway pops in and can enter that first giveaway. And if you have any questions, whether or not a pattern applies to the theme, then feel free to post in the chat thread as well. So I will link that in the show notes, and I hope to see you there. A little update on the cats. They are still a little bit under the weather. All of them still have a little bit of that eye gunk that we've been dealing with. But Eva in particular seems to be kind of almost in the clear. So she's looking really good. Wally's getting a lot better. Sam, unfortunately, it spread from one eye to the other. So he's kind of hit the brunt of it. But I can tell for sure that Wally must have really been feeling sick because I thought he was playful. But in the past few days, when it seems like the medicine really kicked in, oh my gosh, he went from playful to wah! So really, really excited ball of energy. Not all the time, but when he plays, he is really, really playing hard now. So he's running all over the house, and we've got the little cat toy mice for him for both of them to play with, and he's just like throwing them in the air and playing with them. In the mornings, I get up and a little early before Jarrett and Luke wake up, and I go sit and have my coffee and do a little bit of knitting. And usually Sam curls up in my chair next to me, and we have our little morning routine. And apparently the morning, that is the time when Wally and Eva are ready to play. They've actually been really good. They sleep during the night, and both of them seem to be sleeping in our bed with us. But in the morning when I'm awake, they are ready to play. So they have, a 6 a.m. Wrestling match, basically. So Sam and I are kind of quiet in my chair, and in the area in front of the chair, they're wrestling and rolling all over the place, playing with mice and other things. So it's definitely not quite as calm and peaceful each morning, but it makes me laugh. It's amusing watching them play. So it's definitely been a fun morning. So yeah, so I could tell Wally really has been sick because his energy level was quite down compared to what it is now. And they're out there playing now, so I don't want to pull them in and post them on camera. But I will say that they are definitely pretty big eaters, and I can tell for sure that Wally is eating quite a bit. He feels a lot fuller and I guess a little bigger around, so I think we need to be careful that he doesn't turn into too much of a fat cat, although mostly for health issue reasons, because I know that became a problem, possibly with Merlin, and then maybe even a little bit with Guinevere, and even with Sam, some weight issues. But anyway, so but hopefully he's so active and energetic that that he burns off a lot of those calories. But he definitely likes to eat. So we're having fun with them. They are bonding with Sam as well. I haven't had all three of them like cuddle up together, but I've definitely come across Sam cuddling with Eva, and then Sam cuddling with Wally. And so it's really nice to see, and then Wally and Eva cuddling together. It's really nice to see kind of that all three cats are getting along with one another. And I'm waiting for that moment where I come across all three of them snuggled up together. I'm really hoping that happens. So the kittens almost back to healthy, and we are definitely enjoying them. Thank you so very much for watching this podcast episode. Whether you are a returning viewer and you join me every other Thursday to find out what's been going on in my knitting world and a couple of other things, or if this is your first time watching, welcome and thank you. I hope you will come back. So one final kind of brief note, I don't know if you, especially if you are a returning viewer, you may have noticed that I am once again in a slightly different location for the filming of this episode. I did some rearranging of my craft room this past weekend. The way I had it set up before, it was set up that way because we had the futon in here, and so I had to basically have everything along one wall and then the futon on the other wall, and the middle space was open so the futon could fold out. And we took the futon out, and I've been, kind of just using the room in the same basic setup, just adding more stuff in the area where the futon was. And then it suddenly hit me this weekend. It doesn't have to be like this. I could rearrange this room any way that I wanted. And so instead of having my desk facing the wall, I actually have my desk kind of out into the middle of the room, and I'm facing the doorway. And so the window's not quite at my back, but at my back to the side of my desk. And so I thought I would actually record sitting over here so the window light is coming in, but hopefully not being too harsh. So anyway, hopefully the lighting was okay in this episode, and we'll see. I'm also able to hang up, things behind me to have a little bit of decoration. So anyway, once again, thank you so very much for watching. If you are watching this on YouTube and you like the episode, I really appreciate it if you would click that thumbs up underneath the video to say that you like it. And if you have not yet subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. So that way you will know when new podcast episodes come out. Make sure you go over to the forum on Ravelry for the podcast if you have anything that you would like to chat about or participate in the knit along, and you can find the show notes on the website. So I will see you guys again in 2 weeks. Until then, happy knitting!